Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Apolitcally Incorrect Guyana. My name is Kian Jabour, and as usual, I am your host this evening. I know we've taken a little bit of a hiatus over the past couple months. As a young businessman, lots has been happening in the country. I've been extremely caught up with Christmas and all the festive season, but now I've been able to get myself back focused and ready to roll with you guys to talk about all that's happening in and around Guyana. So, first of all, Happy New Year to everyone out there. We're, I think, on our first or second weekend in. So we are ready to get rolling, and Guyana has a super year ahead with a lot of changes that we're expecting to see, some of which we're going to have a wonderful conversation about tonight. I have a guest for the first time on our show. Thought I'd start the new year off on the new show with something different. I have a young entrepreneur, artist, and activist here by the name of Francis Michael Bailey, as he can be found on TikTok or Facebook. Some of you may know him. He's been recently going very, very viral with a bit of his satirical, light-hearted look at a lot of things that are happening in Guyana, as he makes his little clips and kind of gives things from his perspective. So I decided I was going to bring him on the show today. I had invited him on to ask him to have a little chat with me about Guyana, current affairs, and, to express some of his views about what's happening here in Guyana. So, Mr. Bailey, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Jabour.
You are our inaugural guest.
Thank you. Scraping the bottom of the barrel to start the year off.
I like to set the standards very low. Right? So anything from here will be very...
That was a test. That was your opportunity to be like, no, Francis, we start with the cream, then work our way down.
No. Always have them underestimate you. Is that not the rule?
Yes, it's true.
So Francis and I have known one another for many years. His mom is one of my very, very good friends as well. And Francis has, like myself, a young entrepreneur. So I think our journeys have been fairly similar with our education, the time we've got to spend outside of Guyana. So please tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Where are you from? Give me everything.
Well, I like to describe myself as a normal Guyanese. I am a beekeeper and entrepreneur. So I have a beekeeping operation. I remove bees for all sorts of people. I talk a lot. So you mentioned about my activism. I've had involvement in various projects over the years. I was doing more documentaries a while back. I paused on that to focus on business for a while, and recently, maybe over the last year or so, I've been finding my voice more, as it were, and just expressing some of my frustrations. However, given the first incarnation, I did a TV show for a while, right? So I've been trying to drive home at some of the same problems that you are frustrated about, right? And so recently, when I started making content again, I've tried to incorporate criticisms past, because people are not very fond of criticizing anything in our environment. People get very upset, and it's very politically charged environment. So what I decided to do was deliberately infuse a little more humor into some of the pieces. I have a theater background. I used to act in different theater productions. I used to write for Link Show for a while, and comedy writing background. So I tried to infuse that, So all that together, that is, I don't know if that's a good description, but that's where I'm going to leave it, my brother.
So I always like to make sure, especially with your platform and the work that you're doing, I'll do it at the beginning and the end. Can you tell people how they can find you? If they need bees removed, if they need honey, or if they need a good laugh, or or to tune into your videos.
Well, if you need to find me for bees, and you type bees into Google, bees and Guyana, the first result should be my operation, right?
Bees Guyana in Google.
Bee remove, bee anything.
The letter B or
Guyana,
B-E-E?
B-E-E.
Okay. Good. The letter
otherwise
B.
you might get the alphabet.
Good. Sorry.
But,
the word B-E-E and
you could type
Guyana.
B Guyana. You don't have to remember my name, but it should be the first result on Google. Or you can look for Bailey's Bees 592 on TikTok, or Francis Michael Bailey
on Facebook.
Or just look for where, if you want to find
Flag
me
you down on the road.
Yeah, flag me down on the road. Hail up, right? I'm going to stop like a 45.
Like a 4 to 5.
Yeah.
All right, so let us jump straight into the show here now. I have compiled some questions here. All right, and I think we should start off by discussing your opinion on probably the most current affairs in Guyana.
All right.
And I think everybody has had a chance to recently watch in the news quite a bit of confusion and issues and, well, tragedy, to be very honest with you.
Confusion. So you mean day to day, general, normal.
Right. Within the education sector, to be particular.
Okay.
In this moment. A couple of days ago, we had seen, I think the second one in sequence, a teacher being assaulted recently by a parent. We all saw the videos on social media. I don't like to show the clips particularly at this time, but I think everyone would have had a chance to check mainstream media and see what we're talking about, or Facebook for that matter. And then the second one was recently, very tragically, and again, our heartfelt, apology and condolences to all those who have lost in the Christchurch Secondary School fire.
Okay.
That's a very tragic situation. So let's start with the first. We recently saw a video come out of a teacher and a student's parent getting into a physical confrontation, and another one very recently as well. But the one that is in the media recently is a female, a mother and a female teacher in this confrontation. What, in your opinion, is causing this? Why is this happening? Is it something that's happened before? Is it something that we're just seeing now because of social media? And most importantly, what do you think might be the solutions to these types of problems?
Okay, very easy question there. So, here are my thoughts. First of all, violence begets violence. I will not sit here and condone anybody going to a school or any other place and assaulting a teacher. Teachers have a very difficult job. They work for very little money under strenuous conditions. The environments that they also are expected to work in and deliver, in are not the most conducive to what they're doing. So they already have quite a task in front of them. I don't think teachers should be assaulting parents. Now, with that said, I do not know the additional details. I don't think a reasonable parent, it's not a normal thing to imagine a parent would wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go to the school today and I'm going to fight with a teacher, right?
That's not a normal.
Yeah, if you had to choose between,
operation.
like, I'm going to go to the market and negotiate for a good price for the borer, that seems to be going up every week.
Or with a physically assaulted teacher.
With a physically assaulted teacher. Like, I don't imagine most people would wake up and say they want to go and assault a teacher. So I would be very interested in the details that are behind that particular case. And I think it could serve as a learning moment for much of Guyana. Yeah. Now, the incident in question and others similar to it hint at a national problem I think we have where communication is concerned. Non-violent, non-aggressive communication, where I could say something to you, maybe we disagree with it, you say something back to me, it doesn't have to come to blows or verbal assault and the like.
We can have a different opinions.
Good. Now, given my own experiences in school growing up and seeing because there are teachers that physically assault children. I don't want to be presumptuous and make allegations here, but if I were to analyze this as, what would get me so upset that I might want to end up in a fight with a teacher.
If I just may interject right there. I just recently saw a live done with an interview with the mother of the child that was in the
great.
was
so
in the
perhaps
fight.
You could fill me in on the details.
Just in a nutshell, she had said that the teacher had beat her child in class with a ruler or piece of wood, and it ended up leaving splinters in the child's hand. Whoa. So that was her rationale. And she went to the school to talk to them, and she filed a complaint with the principal, and then the teacher was also present at the time, gave her attitude. I'm just giving it as I got it, and the confrontation escalated from there.
Okay, well, you see, it's going in the same direction, I imagine. So there was some physical violence meted out to this woman's child. It's especially upsetting if you're bringing your children up at home. You don't beat them. You have enough regard for them. You don't pick up some wood off the road and lash them in the hand so they're left with splinters. And you take them to a place where they're supposed to be educated and cared for. And the person that's supposed to be caring for them physically assaults them because the child was abused, right? Now, the next process would have been, as she did, to complain to the principal, and the issue should have been escalated further. I did read that the security guard and other people that tried to intervene were also injured. So this parent is clearly drinking her Ferrol or whatever builders that are necessary, or maybe fighting southpaw. But I don't generally find that the security at schools is appropriate in the first place. I mean, generally, guys might look a little tired, or they're not present. You know, so it didn't come as a surprise to know that, that they were also involved in the fracas and could not keep the parent back. But I disagree with violence, and I personally don't believe in hitting children, in teachers being allowed to hit your children, precisely because it can lead to incidents like this.
So I like to look at things from as broad a perspective as possible. And I'm going to be honest, you see these types of confrontations often all over the world. We see them on social media, we see them in the news, everywhere in the world, okay? Whether it be Europe, Asia, Africa, the North America, it happens.
I don't know what UFC channel you are watching, like Teacher Fight TV.
No, so why I say that is because I'm also very conscious that Guyana is a very small country.
Yeah.
And because of this, I think we have to be a bit more cognizant of each other. I think because Guyana is so small, not only demographically in Georgetown's situation, but also we have a very small population. So everybody kind of has this connection to each other. So I think it takes an extra effort or extra bit of work in order to ensure that we as people, functioning members of society, can collaborate and work in these confined spaces in a safe and healthy manner.
But it's also a powder keg in another sense. Like, I remember once driving around the city, and within 4 or 5 corners, I've seen 3 arguments and 1 abuse out, because abuse out is 1 level above argument, right? So, and it just occurred to me that this is a very tense society. There's a lot of charge and aggression that's sort of baked into the society, and any little thing can trigger somebody. And we don't know how to communicate with each other in the absence of this anger, because we learn to communicate with anger. Parents telling the children, shut up, or the teacher shouting at, we are shouting at each other and disrespecting each other. So I agree with you.
Let me go to 2 areas that we just discussed. I like where this conversation is going. So the first one, obviously, to combat these types of confrontation, abuse out, and how to help people learn to deal with their emotional responses in an educated, professional manner.
They should give the security guard a rocket launcher.
No
more problems. You trust Francis.
So it goes right back to that conversation of training, right? You have to put that extra effort of putting programs in place, let's say in Teachers College, to say, listen, you are dealing with lots of people on a daily basis, okay? Here is how you handle confrontation. It will be inevitable. You have to learn how to deal with these situations appropriately.
Good. So you gotta keep your guard up, duck, make sure you bob and weave, and miss the blows, right? And parry, right? I agree. You gotta teach.
Some self-defense courses.
Training is important. When you kick, don't kick too high. You could fall down.
So right? I hope that will be the one takeaway that the government and the ministry can take from this, is that rather than watch the teacher react in a confrontational manner, there are methods to
But
slow things down a little
do you
bit.
think it is a lack of training on the ministry's part, or is it a lack of self-control on the part of teachers, for instance? Because remember, when it comes to exercising
Good.
force, the individual in question now, I remember having a teacher in primary school. I would say, oh, I'm going home today, and I'm going to pick a whip from my cherry tree,
Right.
and she would come home. So, I mean, I spent most of my schooling until maybe like 14, 15. I moved to the UK and finished my schooling down there. And I was always comparing the two systems, you know? And I found myself in a system where it was just unheard of for somebody to go home and pick a whip and come back to school and beat your kid.
And it's acceptable.
But we grew up in it, and we also have people that defend it. You understand?
But more importantly, you, I think, are answering your own question of this tense society. Is it not that foundational process of growing up as a child, always confronted by such aggression,
it's
that has a reaction to our mental health in being adults?
It's demonstrable, actually. In some Scandinavian countries, like, they noted a decrease in the number of violent crimes that they were having. And when they traced it back over like a 20, 30-year period, they realized that, okay, this thing was very much linked to when they abolished corporal punishment in schools, and then afterwards they abolished corporal punishment. Because these children, and they even were able to show that children that were beaten, beaten in their younger years, they are more likely to want to own a gun as an adult, because that feeling of being defenseless as a kid translates to an adult that I need to have a weapon or something. And violence and violent crime was down significantly. But we still hold on to this idea of spare the rod, spoil the child, right? So you must beat the children. So some people will agree with the teacher, ironically enough, that they had to beat the child for whatever reason, and the parent is wrong. I personally believe both parties there are wrong. And it's not just the ministry's responsibility to train people, but we as a people have a lot of work, because they're not in your home with you parenting your kids and stuff. So it's work that needs to come from both sides. But I agree with you, bro.
Of course, right. The education system coming up has to, well, for one, I think, remove the corporal punishment side of things. And then again, that through generational teachings will show that violence is the last resort. Okay, or no resort is not an option at all.
It's not an option. And if they do decide that they're not going to do anything, at least bring in somebody like Pacquiao or Mayweather to train the teachers properly. He could do a little extracurricular thing that could represent himself.
Yeah, problem solved.
Yes.
All right. Now, the next one is this very unfortunate situation with the fire here. I want to give a little bit of background. As we saw in the news, that there was, I think a week previous to yesterday, there was another...
In the science lab.
There was another fire
lab, right?
that they were able to contain. And then a week later, everything goes up in flames. So, just out of curiosity, so this is one thing that I was kind of looking at myself. I was not given too much of information, and maybe you had mentioned in the lab, as to what the source was of the first fire, the first one that they were able to contain. Are you?
I don't know what the first fire was. I don't know if it was some chemical reagent or some lithium or something that was exposed that, that spontaneously combusted. But I do know that, as with many of the other fires that afflict our nation, this fire was caused by slackness.
Good.
Slackness and inattention, right? So we have seen, which fire is this for the year? So this second fire for 8 days, but for the last year, there's been a number of, it's a trend. It's trending.
More than one school, the police station,
hashtag fire, hashtag viral, right? Hashtag Guyana. So what's been happening is, even though building after building burns down, and we have fire and safety codes that call for implementation of things like sprinklers and fire suppression systems, we find that we do not have it in very important... A building like Brickdam Police Station could burn down, okay? And they didn't have one sprinkler inside. And did you notice that we have a very spiritual fire service?
Right.
I only say
spiritual.
Yes, all of the hoses are holy. As soon as I see the fire service turn up, and everybody starts to pray, because it's like a spiritual experience. you see the holy hoses, and you know you have to pray for this building.
That they
Because
save this
everything
building.
gone. You're like, God, please protect these people. Right? Oh, my Lord.
And hope it's not dry season
Yeah.
and the gutter empty.
Well, once I saw a fire where they're actually pumping from the gutter. In this instance, I had a friend that was next door at where Georgetown Club was, and he said these guys were trying to pump water from Colgrane Pool, which was next door,
Yeah.
right? So they normally show up with an insufficient amount of water to do the job at hand. We don't have working fire hydrants in these systemic problems that, pile on top of each other and lead to fires like this. So I am not surprised.
I'm beginning to see a trend in your responses to these issues, and there seems to be a systemic problem when it comes to training and management and upkeep.
Maintenance, maintenance.
Good. Well, let's take this now to a very interesting question, and I was able to luckily give you a little bit of insight on a few of the questions that I had.
I'm just taking a pin on this thing
of
here,
course.
right? I am also not surprised if they were to find that Christchurch, the wood in the building was so old that an odd ray of sun caught it at the wrong angle and deflected onto a piece of wood ant's nest and spontaneously caused it to combust. I would not be surprised, okay? It's not maintained like you said,
goes back to
right?
maintenance.
Good, so
Good.
We'll see.
All right. This is one of the key questions I think I jumped out at you, and I want to discuss, Guyana on a holistic view right now. So calculations have shown, and everyone is open to the media. Yeah. I know you might not get this information as directly as I'm about to give it to you, but you're welcome to take the information that is out there presently in the media and on the ministry's websites, and then also through the oil companies. But what my calculation that I had recently done with my team is that Guyana right now is earning on average about $5 million per day on oil. Okay? On oil revenue. This has to do with the two current FPSOs that are out there, Destiny and Unity. They're bringing around 360,000 barrels of oil price being at around $80 a barrel. And then you take Guyana's profit share. We actually use Hess Corporation, which is one of the partners in the current oil blocks with Exxon and the government of Guyana and CNOC, where they had shown the breakdown of the expenses that they're spending. So Guyana's 50% of that profit oil and our 2% royalties equate to about in and around $4 to $5 million a day every 24 hours. So with that figure, on top of the fact that by the end of this year to next year, we're also going to be bringing in a bigger ship that is going to double that production, providing oil price stays the same. You're looking in and around $10 million every 24 hours that is being paid to Guyana for our portion of the profits in the oil. Alongside the other domestic products that we are already producing, that Guyana has traditional income earners, whether it be rice, bauxite, sugar, gold, diamonds, etc., sand, timber, on top of all of our other resources. My question to you is, with all of this disposable cash that Guyana currently has and the government has at its availability, what do you feel would constitute a successful term in government come the 2025 elections?
2025.
Yeah, so we've been earning this money for maybe about a year now, the $5 million per day. As you can tell, every now and again in the media, you see in and around $1 billion in our natural resource fund account in New York. And then again,
well, to the best of my knowledge, not all of that money is accessible to us, if I'm not mistaken. We can't really access all of that money.
I know you're
could draw down on it in like a percentage of the actual amount that's accruing in the account. So that's problematic for me alone.
Okay.
The fact that we are not in control of this money. It's like I come into your yard, you find gold in your backyard. I say, Kian, I'm gonna help you mine this gold in your backyard. I'm gonna help you explore for it, and you don't have, maybe you little Brooks, like Guyana was, right? I'm gonna give you the money, but you're gonna pay me back when I find gold. And then afterwards, I say I'm gonna take my cut, and then I'm also gonna take your cut and put it in my bank account, and you could get some.
Right. Well, I just want to make sure we make sure things are clear here. We may have a difference of opinions here, but according to my research,
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, there was the whole Mace debacle in Parliament.
Yeah, I remember.
And that occurred actually during the tabling of the Natural Resource Fund laws being changed by this current government, by the PPP government. The percentages that you're referring to that they were allowed to draw down on would have been removed during that time. So the money is accessible currently.
All of the money is
Yes.
accessible currently. Well, I was hoping that it was not accessible to us because when I look around Guyana, unless we have transitioned into a state where, some countries, like I went to Suriname once and I thought they did a very good job of preserving their colonial architecture. So unless Guyana is, we looked around us and we're like, with all this money coming in, people would expect us to develop at a fast rate.
Yeah.
But we don't want to lose, we have a nostalgic feeling. We don't want to lose the charm of a 6-foot pothole that could host 50 tilapia and a caiman. We
That's
don't
Sandy
want
Bob
to
Street
lose,
right
no,
now.
we don't want to lose that, When you're driving down South Road and, that old familiar smell of a pile of garbage just wafting in the morning breeze. That's so beautiful, and I don't feel we want to lose that. I think a successful term, to answer your question in a non-facetious manner, right? A successful term for this government would mean that everyday Guyanese can look around them and start to see real change, okay? Now, when we talk about change, different people have different opinions on what exactly that means. I think most people can agree that infrastructural development, sound infrastructure, a sound plan for infrastructural development is part of that change. There's so many people, one of the things I know we're going to talk about was the giving out of house lots and the like, but there's so many people that have already taken out mortgages and are building their houses around this country, spending millions, tens of millions of dollars, and they have to pay back this money over decades. And when they go outside, they have big craters in the road to drive through because until everyone is finished building, they're not going to get a full road.
Right.
Okay? Our children still don't have pavements to walk on in most of the country and find themselves walking through mud and puddles when it rains to get to school.
Okay.
Those things need to stop, right? The quality of life for everyday Guyanese. I can't believe we're this rich. I just cannot. And it doesn't smell like it when I go through
5
border
million US
market.
a day.
It doesn't smell like 5 million US worth of stench, okay?
All right.
So we need to start putting the money in appropriate places. But as we were talking about earlier with accountability, maintenance, right? It's not good enough to just spend money because when we had $5, I don't think we were spending the $5 in relative terms, right? We were not spending that $5 properly. We would give out a $5 contract and maybe $1 would have to go to somebody. Another $1 would get stolen or, a 10 bag of cement end up at the contractor house. And then and we get 5 cents
Somebody
worth
who
of
gives out the
work
contract
for the
got get
country,
raised, right?
I saw some pictures recently. I think it's Burma Road. I'm not sure where Burma Road is.
Yes.
However, it had some big holes and it was refurbished or refinished, resurfaced recently, and it's already in a state of deterioration.
Yeah.
So we need accountability. It's not just about where this money, we can throw as much money at this problem as we want, but if we are not demanding that we contractors execute the works to a particular standard, we need to raise the standard of this country.
Well, I'm going to give you some examples here of where we've been finding a lot of this type of shortcomings in the work itself, in the quality of work itself exists. And I mean, I know we're all Guyanese here. We all have seen, even within the last 2 years, roads being built and already breaking.
Yeah.
And what we're noticing is that exactly not what is being paid for is being delivered, right? And what we're having a problem with is that same level of accountability that we keep coming back to, of which you sit down there and you watch a contract go out for $100 million to build a road. And then you would say, okay, in this contract it stipulates 4 inches of asphalt. But the contractor decided, here, no man,
Yeah.
nobody really watching me, or me partner is the one who give me the
Put a
contract.
0 and a point in front of that 4.
There we go.
Yeah,
Let me put half of the amount as asphalt.
Yeah,
And we ain't got to spend as
pizza,
much.
right? I
So-
noticed that.
Right. So we're ending back up in these positions now in this country with those types of, how do you say, oversight. All right.
A lack of
yes.
sufficient oversight, and these problems plague us. Okay, it's literally like a plague. There's that road behind UG. Okay, since I moved,
This is the fire road.
the road that links to Sapphire,
Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
So since I moved back to Guyana, I've probably seen that road fixed 7, 8,
Yes.
9 times before they finally did what they were supposed to. And there are many streets like that. We do this
In a part and half
surface
guttering,
good. We do
right.
surface work.
Uh-huh.
We don't get down and do the actual proper engineering solutions that need to be implemented. And the work keeps having to be redone.
Almost like purposefully though.
I
right?
do believe there is some intent behind it. Otherwise, we spent something that gets me perpetually upset about Guyana is the condition of Le Repentir Cemetery. That thing hurts me. I can't describe why it disturbs me so much, but it's to know that there are so many Guyanese from the past whose blood, sweat, and tears have built this nation of all colors, descriptions, and races that are buried in that cemetery that built this country. And we have them with literally garbage dumped on top of them.
Yeah.
It's a full jungle bush. I moved bees in that cemetery, right? Because sometimes people have to get buried. Is that terrible? People might have to get buried and there are bees living in a tomb, sting up people trying to have their funeral. Is that the sort of respect we have for our fellow Guyanese?
For each other, absolutely.
We need that kind of consideration. For me, a successful term is addressing things like that. But in the last PPP term, I remember they spent $500 million to start cleaning that cemetery. Over 300 Africanized beehives were removed from the tombs in that cemetery. This is before I started keeping bees, okay? And that is incredible. 80,000 bees per tomb, right? So, $500 million. And look at that place today. Drive through Cemetery Road and look left, look right.
So
tell me if you can see the 500 million.
So they cut a lot of grass. They cleaned up things with a facade manner. And
no,
then,
they did a good job. They started and they did a good job.
But maintenance.
It was left off and we don't maintain
Absolutely.
anything.
I think that's our biggest problem.
Yeah, we don't maintain it.
So I want to touch on a topic moving along that you had brought up just a second ago, which is these house lots and lands and houses that are being, well, I don't like the word given away, are being sold to Guyanese, granted at a discounted rate compared to what real estate prices are. And then they have to obviously build their homes, furnish them, etc. You know, it's being promoted that, you know, thousands and thousands of house lots are being given away, and houses are being built. As we know, nothing comes for free. So what we're watching is a large portion of our population get a home, but also inherit a debt in paying for that home. Now, economically, as we all know, I mean, all Guyanese in and around the country, I'm not sure anybody can really argue, but our cost of living has gone up significantly.
Unless you just eat air.
Unless you just
And
eat
drink
air.
water.
So I, you know, again, calculation, I saw, you know, the World Bank and a couple other organizations try to put some figures to it. So we're in and around 30% in cost of living. All right. And don't get me wrong, through international causes as well, this is not just a local problem. So with bora and tomatoes and meat and fuel and cement and basic necessities all rising by, again, around 30%, give or take. And then you watch something like an 8% increase in public servant salaries. And some people may not think, oh, well, why is that such a big deal? That's just the public service. What about the private sector? I always like to make sure people remember that the public service, the government is the largest employer and spender in this country.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, they're the largest organization, they're the largest, corporation, if you will. All right? So whatever happens to that sector tends to have a ripple effect on the private sector. We kind of keep pace with the public sector, whatever they are doing. So if we know that cost of living has risen that much, and then you give them an 8% raise in which you tax, and then you not burden, but you give them the opportunity to own a home, well, not particularly own it, but have the opportunity to
live
own
in
it.
one, to live in one,
To live in a
to live
home
in one.
that the bank owns until you own it. So my question to you is, how do you feel about that system, and what do you think that will have, what type of effect will that have?
You see, the problem is a lot of you guys are not visionary, okay? You have to be visionary about this thing. I am a visionary, and I understand, like the people giving out the land, Guyanese could practice magic, okay? Magic. Now, when you get your 8% and you're looking at that and you're thinking, well, cost of living gone up by 30%. It gone up so much, you can't even say planting anymore. You have to go in the market and say, how much for Mr. Planting? You have to put some respect on his
Like Mr.
name.
Peanut.
Yeah. How much for Mr. Pumpkin? Mrs. Squash. Yes. 360 a pound.
That kind of value.
The value, Dr. Chicken. Okay, right? So now that when you look at that and then you see salary increase, well, maybe you have to start just adding things to yourself. But you are hinting at a very real problem. So it's not good enough to just give out house lots. We're dealing with numbers. Okay, you could say you gave out 1,000 house lots. When we start to dive and peel behind the layers and ask some questions like, what's the size of those house lots? Okay. One problem I have is that with the low income house lots I see them giving out, it's like some little matchstick houses, like little, I'm wondering. So it almost feels as if we are not thinking ahead, right? So it doesn't seem to make allowance for people that find themselves on that rung of the economic ladder to climb. We must bake in some sort of social mobility. So how would that person, are you saying they're going to be stuck in a low income position for the rest of their life? If they wanted to expand, have a larger family, if you're poorer, right, wouldn't it make sense to give you a little more land, so maybe you have a bit of agricultural land to do some farming and subsidize the cost of food in the market? So given that the country has so much land, I do take issue with the small parcels that we're handing out. And then when it comes to building those houses with the cost of materials and everything going up, it's almost unmanageable. And then you have to deal with the infrastructure. So what I do think will happen is that people will collect their titles and stuff, and a lot of people don't have the money even to go pay for the land when they get it. And then the next few years, next few decades, we'll have a real big problem with debt.
Because I feel like it's creating a little bit of a bubble,
it's a debt bubble.
Right? And then all of a sudden, people no longer can afford to pay their mortgages. The bank starts to reclaim houses and land.
Sort of like
and we kind of reverse the whole process.
Back to the 2008 recession when you had that wave of foreclosures in the U.S.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
It's a risk. It's a balancing act. There's a risk going on.
It's a risk.
Interesting take, and that's what I like. I'm here to just try and get some different perspectives. So, rushing along because we only have an hour-long program. My next question to you is: we have something very interesting coming up. It is our first oil money infused budget, national budget, that is going to be presented on coming Monday. So with all the conversation we've had and, your opinion and your take on Guyana as it currently is, what do you believe are what would you like to see some of the changes made or some of the investments made by the government when it comes to that budget?
Okay, well...
What do you think are the pressing issues?
Pressing issues. Well, for one, the infrastructure is a pressing issue, okay? That's a pressing issue because it affects the entire population. The amount of money we have to spend collectively replacing tires, shocks, changing bits of our car that fall off because of some of these potholes, it has a collective cost to all of us. Like I make a joke sometimes that I go in a pothole and I see my whole salary flash before my eyes, right? It's just whoosh, all my money gone. or you just feel it in your pocket sometimes.
As it hits and the whole...
You say, oh, boy, my pocket, boy. Oh, right? So
and the price, again, of parts rising.
good. And your productivity as a nation is linked to the quality of your public infrastructure.
Right.
Right? That's one thing. Transportation is another issue that needs addressing. We don't have we have a sort of private public transportation system. That also will affect the productivity of your nation. And the other thing I would love to see money spent on, we have a big ballooning budget. Our schools are in desperate need of attention.
Right.
Okay, I don't even think some people know how bad it is because they've not seen anything else. But it's abysmal. And if we are to arm and equip the students of the future to be present and contributing members in this new society, this new workforce we're trying to build here, it starts with the quality of education and opportunities that those young people receive. So while we are pushing people to do scholarships and stuff in the here and now, we also need to look and see the young people coming up.
Yeah.
Fix the schools, make sure they're equipped science labs and they have reagents
Computer
and things,
labs.
computers, right?
We don't dig oil with pickaxe and shovels anymore.
No, we're sucking it out with a straw.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but that's exactly the point. I mean, how many of these public schools even have functioning computer labs? Right? So
hold on, and
go ahead, please.
Finally, I think also you need some investment in agricultural industries to make sure that we don't fall victim to the curse of oil, and we just budget everything based on this resource. We need to continue diversifying our economy, make sure that, and you could start sending people into more hinterland regions. Give some land out in the bush. Let people go there, give them some, fund it, right? Let people go
but
there.
But that's it. Access to financing is obviously a big issue, right?
Access to microfinancing, even for entrepreneurs. Once, when I was starting out business, I remember, just side story, I went to iPad for a business loan. I had a four-wheel drive, and they told me, so what's your collateral? I was like, that's the collateral. They're like, well, you need another vehicle to leave that as the collateral.
No, they want to
you can't drive it. You can't drive it if it's collateral. So I'm like, where am I gonna? If I had 2 cars, I wouldn't be here for a loan. Right? But
in the upper bracket.
Financing available for people in agriculture and the like. But those are some of the places I'd like to see money spent. What about you?
I appreciate the asking. But I'd like to stick on 2 points that you brought up there that I actually have a little bit of an opinion on. So the first one is financing.
Yeah.
So us as young entrepreneurs, I think that and correct me if I'm wrong, is always our biggest issue. Where am I getting more money to expand? Where am I getting money to grow?
Without robbing the bank.
Without robbing the bank or the government or anybody.
Don't rob, no.
Right?
Yes.
So we got to pay your taxes and so on, right?
Man don't have this problem, How am I going to get financing? I'm going to walk on Regent Street. Thief man never have this discussion we're having.
So with that being said, lots of people are very excited about the GDP growing, which we just saw one of the organizations put out. Guyana's GDP set to grow by 25% in 2023. So what I like about that is I do believe that is true in the context of there are lots of companies, large companies coming in, and our export now with oil obviously increasing, so that will increase. What I find very interesting is we have taken the media's perspective, that we've been reading a lot, and that there are these wonderful opportunities out there that you must go and open a business and take up this mantle.
Planting trip to the oil rig.
Planting. Yeah. We started to sell it to each other now. We can sell to the oil rig.
You and your little boat outside. I got cassava.
I think what has been taken into consideration is that large increase in cost of living and raw materials rising means that the investment needed to start a micro or small business is much higher now. So all of a sudden, I go from taking $5 million to open a little packaging plant where I buy 2 little machines that I got to pay my VAT and my duties on, and I got to open a little, take a little room, tile it up, make it kind of sanitary, and then my packaging machine for my planting chips. All of a sudden, to rent the room is now 10
triple,
times.
you know, 10 times how much it used
Right?
to be.
You've
yeah.
gone from 40,000 to 150,000
For the same space.
for the
or
same
less,
space.
Yeah.
Right? You've now gone to the cost of buying those machines and shipping them in gone through the roof. All right? All of a sudden, the raw materials being planted by itself from
It's
the
also
farmers
gone up.
gone through the roof. So all of a sudden, my idea of opening my little small business costs 3 times as much. Again, access to financing. So we're now looking at saying, take these opportunities up, everyone, grab them, but I don't know where you're getting the money from to do it.
Yeah.
So it's part,
While
I think,
at
of
the
why we're
same
not moving.
time providing
quickly.
concessions for
Fast
people that want to come to Guyana.
Right.
So we can't inadvertently be telling Guyanese, you need to leave Guyana to come back to get some of the benefits and concessions.
That's madness.
Right, that
the
is
duty-free
crazy,
concession and the
crazy.
this and the that.
Because we have been
Yeah.
here all the time. So
And then by the time you go over there and live between you and I,
Mm-hmm.
you're a little duty-free on your arm. You kind of say, you know what?
Yeah.
In order to risk my
come
life
back.
and come back together. I don't know if this is... but nonetheless, that's in my next point to you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when it comes to constituting a term, I think in my personal political perspective, I believe that there are pillars of society that everyone requires before they personally invest to have available to them as safety measures and protocols that they are able to live a secure life. So for one, I must be able to pick up the phone and dial 911 and a police must show up at my door at an appropriate time, or they must at least answer the phone, right?
for safety and security.
Your safety and security. The second aspect is your education. You need to make sure, well, I want to raise a family, or I'm investing in this country. How can my children progress here as well?
You mustn't go to the hospital and fear you're gonna die.
And
'cause
that's
you
the
had a
third
little
one.
Sniffle.
That's
you
the
know?
third one. Are you worried about going to public hospital, walking in there? Yes, it's free, or not the medicine, but the care. And then all of a sudden having to worry, well, you know, I've been watching the media and the maternal deaths, which are the most tragic thing that can happen because
Mind
these
you,
type of things are just negligent.
I will say
most-
as well, they do have some very skilled staff at public institutions because they see some of the widest range of illnesses and
Unbelievable.
ailments. Okay.
Yeah,
And they're not well compensated again. I know the doctors recently
12 hours a
got
day
a
working
pay
for
increase,
Right.
right? A lot of the nurses and stuff. But in my experience, the service, the level of service, I had a friend in male medical once, and he complained about the pain he was having, and he was left alone with no food for many hours. This is not the first time. The service is
yeah.
terrible.
So
the
I
toilets, they could improve those facilities.
So I like, you know, it's funny because we were talking about the teacher that got into the confrontation with the parent. I was on the phone today with a friend of mine, and I said, you know, I would have liked to see the teacher handle it a bit better because you can't really speak for the parents, but you're a trained professional as a teacher.
Like a roundhouse kick
Well,
at the end and a little
No,
finish
but,
him.
but more so a little personal restraint in making sure that, you know, you don't let things escalate to that level.
Yeah.
All right. And what that person told me really took me back. They said, Kian, I hear you. And you know what? I agree. More training is necessary. More things should be happening in that context to keep better equipped people. You know, security at the schools, blah, blah, blah. But he said, Kian, you got to remember, the teachers, the doctors, the nurses, the administrative staff of the government, the people we deal with or need to deal with on a daily basis in this country are just human as well. Meaning, every day, he said, this is my perfect, I work a private sector job. He said, Kian, me and my wife, we get up every morning, we kiss each other, we make up breakfast, we get ready for work, we sing songs, we have a lovely time, okay? And we get ready for work because we have double income, we don't have children yet, we're happy people, okay? Well, in there, right? Contented people. He said, Kian, by the time I jump in my car and I drive from Diamond to town where I work, I want to kill everyone. Don't talk to me. I mean, my wife and I often have to take 2
How
seconds.
many bus just
and-
overtake you from inside?
You fall in the pothole, all of a
Yeah.
sudden you are wildly frustrated.
Yeah.
And we talk about service and expecting more from our professionals and, you know, nurses and doctors and so on. But they're dealing with the same things we are.
You know what?
Right.
We know what? We must care about each other. And this is something that has been exploited by both major political parties for a long time. basically otherizing half of our country at any given moment.
Right.
And we don't care about each other.
Right.
And if you were to care about someone and put yourself in someone else's shoes, as much as I have my beef with the police force in Guyana, and I think they can generally be incompetent, I had my house broken into months later up to now. Hello, officers. I'd love to see one of you detectives come to take a fingerprint. But I've been looking for the police, okay? But when I walk into a station, as much as I think the provision of their service is poor, when I go into a police station, I understand.
It's abysmal.
It is terrible. It is more
flooded. The chair that is sitting on.
You know, private businesses have much better facilities. The toilet is nasty. So come on, if the government is there, and I don't care whichever, because these issues were there on the coalition, there on the PPP, they're there, right?
Correct.
If you feel uncared for and unloved in any relationship, underappreciated, if you feel like that in any relationship, you're going to check out.
Yeah.
And similarly, we have that case where many public servants have checked out from the system. They're there to get their money or whatever. They don't care about your concerns. And me and you, we're Joe Public. They don't care about us because, you know, I'm not getting paid for this. So
let me, you know, a lot of the comments and a lot of the feedback that you get from the, you know, what do I say? The ones that benefit the most is you often hear, it can take time, man. Don't worry, it coming. My question to you is, as an excuse with a country with less than 1 million people, with as much money as we do have now, when should we expect, or what do you think is a reasonable expectation coming on to 57 years?
I agree with that time, but I agree long time. That's my addendum. Long time now, we're supposed to have been seeing some of these changes. If we compared ourselves,
because some of these things are not money, right? Some of these things are not money-based.
Not money-based. If we compare ourselves with somewhere like Singapore, that got their independence around the same time, their development has eclipsed ours by leaps and bounds. What we lack and have lacked in this country is a solid plan for how we are going to develop. Every few years when administrations change, whoever comes in will leave whatever the other set started building to rot and fail. The next set come in, they'll leave what the other guys did to rot. And like that, we go along decade by decade, wasting billions of dollars. Okay? So it calls for some amount of political maturity where there can be continuity, where things are good, where systems have been implemented and they are working. Let's keep it going. I was not fully in love with the coalition government. No government I've ever been fully in love with. I always hope for the best. I hope they can work out. I think that the public infrastructure was much better under the coalition, right? It's not to do with their rigging and all of that. I disagree. Where they're wrong, they're wrong. You understand?
Yeah.
Their management of the public infrastructure, getting the roads and stuff on the way, was excellent. I don't know what processes were set in place, but they seem to have been allowed to lapse now, right? PPP have strong suits. Coalition have their own strong suits. What I wish to see is people being able to work together more, and we have other parties that have a voice to lend, right? So I hope Guyanese are more receptive in the future to listening.
Right. So I appreciate you bringing that in, because it's one of the questions that I do have for you, and I don't think you had seen this one. Come the 1st of March, I don't know if you know this, that there's a joinder group of parties that had won 1 seat in Parliament. All right, and they're going to be the changeover from the LJP party to now ANUG party and TNM happens on the 1st of March. On your personal opinion, what are some of the laws or some of the changes that you'd like to see done to our legislation that you think those parties should try to table when it comes to, you know, the politics and the governing of the country?
Whew. First of all, I don't think they necessarily need... Well, we could have some revisions of legislation regarding the oil and gas industry, right? But I think more importantly, is the enforcement of existing. When you start reading the Constitution and the laws of Guyana, when you start going through the Local Government Act, you realize very quickly that many of the problems and maladies that exist in this society already have remedies set out in these books, in these documents. We simply lack for enforcement. Okay. So it's not always the case. Sometimes we look at a problem and we think we need some legislation to fix this. Nope, it's been in the book for like 55 years, but nobody is enforcing it.
And there's no accountability.
There's no accountability.
Nobody has any repercussions of not enforcing it.
No. So that is something that needs to change. We need politicians that are serious about the governance of the country and what is going to benefit the country. We have political parties, typically the main ones I'm talking about here that have been in office.
Well, only two have, right?
That are scared of the people. On one hand, they project power, but they are terrified of people. They're terrified of their constituents because they're all scared of losing a vote. Therefore, when coalition comes into power, they're scared to tell people about squatting. Right now, there's an explosion of squatting around the place, especially next to the highway. You can put a fruit stand anywhere. You can say you want to sell food in front of Parliament. You sell food in front of it. Do what you want. There's laws against it, but nobody wants to, say, hey, you can't squat there because they might say they're not voting for us.
As you just saw recently.
Exactly. So, when both of them get in, they feel this obligation to allow certain things to slide because they're scared. We need
appeasing their people.
Good. We cannot, no more appeasement. We need bold politicians that are not afraid to make bold moves for the progress and development of this country.
Is one of the ways to get that done not a balance in Parliament? If I were to start to restrict a little bit of the decision-making process to say, listen, rather than you making decisions just to help your group of people, right? How about you have to consult with both sides of the table and make sure this works for everyone?
I don't think that's a crazy idea. Anything that has to do with collaboration,
Absolutely.
People working together.
Exactly.
I even believe, at some point I'd done some research into digital tools that can be used to enhance governance, right? So we are not in the 1960s or 70s anymore. And just like these people get on TikTok or Facebook to post, hate speech to the other party, we could also use these tools so the public have more of a voice and more of a say in some of these issues of importance to them. Right? I would like to see some of those tools be utilized.
And here, we only have 2 minutes left, but here's one of the things I want to make sure that you're advocating for in the 2025 election.
Go on.
Presidential debates.
Oh, I love a good debate.
I love it. I think we need to get all our leaders on a stage, all the potential leaders on a stage, and let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, but
I want you to be confronted with questions.
It's not just about... I love the idea of a presidential debate. What I love even more than that, right, was give me the shivers, is imagining an open-minded Guyanese public that are going to come along and assess people on the merits of what they have to say, what their plan is for you, for this nation. Normally, I see people go, it's like the choir who goes to these things. So you already made up your mind.
Singing the same tune already.
I'm supporting these guys, and you show up and no matter what they say, they could be like, from next week, we're going to put donkeys in charge of all the police stations, and right, all you're going to have to pay, God, you have to pay taxes in carrots, and you're like,
Rather than sit down and say, wait a second, maybe donkeys might not be the best decision.
Donkey, no, you got a set of hoof. How are they going to sign the statement? But we need to think critically. We need to be less critical.
We need the media to be less biased.
Yeah, well, we got to do a whole other topic on objectivity in media, because it can be very difficult to discern what is the truth, what is not the truth.
There you go.
Sometimes.
So on that note, everyone, viewers, and back for the new year on Apolitcally Incorrect. And as you can tell, true to our name, I have a very apolitical No, he's been excellent.
Ah.
And I appreciate having a very different opinion on things, seeing things from a different
I
perspective for a
appreciate you
change.
having me. These conversations are always a pleasure. You know.
Yeah. And again, just Google B Guyana or
B Bailey's Bees,
Ba-
Francis.
Go ahead.
Clownish guy on Facebook.
He's on
whatever.
TikTok.
Yeah.
Francis Michael Bailey on Facebook, and you're going to see all of his stuff. He has some really fantastic clips that I think all of you will get a little bit of a lighthearted look at things, but maybe think a little deeper and open your mind to some new thoughts. So once again, thank you for joining us this evening. We will be back regularly on Friday evenings right here on TBN and Critics Platform. My name is Kian Jabour. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right.